The space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was called Horizon's Edge, and it was the biggest school in the galaxy. Students from 12 different star systems came here to learn together. Some had scales, some had tentacles, some floated instead of walking, and some were human. Walked through the long silver hallway. Her footsteps made soft sounds on the metal floor. Around her, students of all shapes and sizes moved to their classes. A tall creature with 4 arms passed by her. It was 3 times her height. A small floating being with glowing eyes drifted past her shoulder. Did not stare. She was used to this now. She was 17 years old. She had brown hair that she kept in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard gray uniform of the academy. There was nothing special about her appearance. She was not tall. She was not strong. She did not have special powers. She was just a human girl. Most aliens thought humans were boring. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Compared to species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years, humans were like bobbies. Young, primitive, unremarkable. Did not argue with this. She simply walked to her class, her tablet tucked under her arm. The classroom was large and round. Seats curved upward like a bowl. 40 students sat in these seats. They came from 8 different species. Some desks were filled with water for the aquatic students. Some seats had special supports for species with unusual bodies. Walked to the back of the room. She always sat in the back. She liked it there. It was quiet. She could read without anyone bothering her. Her friend was already waiting. He was human too, a boy with worried eyes and messy black hair. He was the same age as. They had grown up on the same colony ship before coming to the academy. "You're almost late," said. Sat down next to him. Almost is not late. On her other side sat. He was the 3rd human in the class. He was taller than both of them, with a friendly face and an easy smile. The 3 of them were the only humans in a room full of aliens. Opened her tablet and began reading. On the screen was text about something called the Battle of Thermopylae. It happened on Earth thousands of years ago. 300 warriors had held off an army of thousands. Found this very interesting. "What are you reading now?" asked, looking at her screen. "History," said. "You always read history, military history, war history, battles and tactics," shook his head. "Don't you get tired of it?" "No," said simply. She continued reading. At the front of the room, their teacher arrived. Her name was Instructor. She was a species with blue skin and 4 arms. She was tall and graceful, and she taught galactic diplomacy. "Good morning, students," Instructor said. Her voice was calm and kind. "Today we will discuss trade agreements between the inner systems." Some students groaned. Trade agreements were boring, but listened anyway. She always listened. She absorbed information like a sponge absorbed water. Across the room, a group of students laughed about something. They were a warrior species. They had thick-scaled skin, powerful muscles, and natural armor plates on their bodies. They were proud of their strength. They looked down on weaker species. One of them, a large male named, glanced at the humans. He whispered something to his friends. They all laughed again. His face turned red. "They're making fun of us again." Did not look up from her tablet. "Let them." "Doesn't it bother you?" "No," turned a page on her screen. "Words don't break bones." The class continued. Instructor explained the complex rules of galactic trade. Most students looked bored. They were still whispering and laughing. The students, a telepathic species with large dark eyes, sat quietly and listened. They always seemed to know what everyone was thinking. Read about how the 300 Spartans had used the narrow passage to fight the larger army. They had chosen the battlefield carefully. They had used the terrain to their advantage. Numbers had not mattered. Position had mattered. She found this lesson more useful than trade agreements. 30 minutes into the class, something changed. The lights flickered. Everyone looked up. The station's lights never flickered. Power systems were perfect on Horizon's edge. Then the lights flickered again. A low rumble passed through the floor. Students looked at each other with confusion. Instructor stopped her lecture. Her 4 hands gripped the podium. "Everyone remain calm," she said, but her voice was not calm anymore. The windows of the classroom looked out into space. Through the glass, students could see the stars. They could see the distant glow of a nearby planet. They could see the normal blackness of the void. And then they could see ships. Hundreds of ships. They appeared from nowhere, dropping out of faster-than-light travel all at once. They surrounded the station like a swarm of insects. They were dark and angular with sharp edges and red lights. They were not friendly ships. Closed her tablet. She stood up slowly and looked out the window. Grabbed her arm. "What's happening?" Before she could answer, the sirens began. Loud and sharp, they filled the air with warning. Red lights flashed along the walls. Students began to panic. Some screamed. Some ran for the door. The door did not open. Blast doors had sealed automatically. Heavy metal barriers covered every exit. The classroom had become a box, a trap. Instructor rushed to her console. She pressed buttons frantically. "Security, this is Classroom 7. We are locked in. Please respond." She waited, static. "Security, please respond." Nothing. The intercom crackled. A voice spoke. It was harsh and clicking, like insects rubbing their legs together. It spoke in an alien language. Then the translator activated and the words became clear. "Attention, Station Horizon's Edge. This is Commander of the Dominion. You are now under our control. Surrender peacefully and minimal harm will come to you. Resist and you will be destroyed. You have 10 of your minutes to comply." The message ended. Silence filled the classroom. 40 students stared at each other. Some were crying. Some were frozen with fear. The students had stopped laughing, even looked pale beneath his scales. Stood at the window watching the dark ships. Her face showed no expression. Her eyes moved slowly, counting the vessels, noting their positions, studying their formation. His voice shook. "What do we do?" She did not answer immediately. She was thinking. Her mind was racing through everything she had read, every battle, every siege, every desperate last stand. Finally she spoke. Her voice was quiet but steady. "First, we need information. Then we need a plan." The sirens continued to wail. Outside the window, the invasion had begun. Panic spread through the classroom like fire through dry grass. Students ran in circles. They banged on the sealed doors. They screamed for help that would not come. Instructor tried to maintain order. "Everyone, please stay calm. Help will arrive soon." But her 4 hands were shaking. She did not believe her own words. Through the windows, everyone could see what was happening outside. Small attack ships flew toward the station. They latched onto the hull like parasites on a wounded animal. Bright sparks appeared as they cut through the metal walls. They were boarding. "We need to fight them," shouted. The big male stood in the center of the room, his clawed fists raised. "When they come through that door, we crush them." Some of his friends roared in agreement. Their warrior blood was hot. They wanted battle. A small student squeaked in fear. There were tiny creatures, barely half a meter tall, with quick movements and large ears. "Fight them. They have weapons. They have armor. We're students." "Then we die as warriors," declared. "No one is dying," a quiet voice said. Everyone turned, had moved from the window. She stood near the teacher's console, her arms crossed. Laughed. "The human speaks. What do you know about fighting, little creature? Your species has no claws, no armor, no strength. You are the weakest beings in this room." "Maybe," said, "but we're also the oldest." This confused him. Oldest. Humans joined the galaxy 50 years ago. My species has ruled our worlds for 10,000 years. And humans have been killing things for 300,000 years. His voice was calm. We killed animals bigger than you with pointed sticks. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that burned entire continents. We are still here. That means something." The room fell silent. No one had heard speak this much before. She was always the quiet one, the girl who sat in the back and read her tablet. "Empty words," growled, but he did not sound as confident as before. Walked to the window and pointed at the ships. "Those are Dominion vessels. I read about them. They are in species, hive mind tendencies, strong hierarchy. They follow their commanders without question. That is their strength." She paused. "It is also their weakness." Moved closer to her. "What do you mean?" "Insects work together perfectly when their leader tells them what to do, but if the leader falls, they become confused, lost." Turned back to the class. "We don't need to defeat their whole army. We just need to break their chain of command." And student raised her hand. Her name was, and her large dark eyes reflected the emergency lights. "How do you know so much about them?" "I read," said simply. "I read everything. History, biology, military tactics. Most people think humans are boring because we don't have special abilities, but we have one thing no other species has. We have 10,000 years of written warfare, every trick, every strategy, every desperate plan that ever worked. It's all in our books." The station shook. Somewhere in the distance there was an explosion. The lights flickered again. Instructor approached. "What are you suggesting, student?" Turned to the teacher's console. "May I?" Hesitated, then stepped aside. His fingers moved across the console. Screens appeared in the air around her. Station maps, maintenance tunnels, security feeds. Most of the security cameras were offline, but a few still worked. Through them, could see soldiers moving through the hallways. They were tall and dark, with hard shells covering their bodies. They had too many legs and carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. "There are approximately 200 soldiers on the station," said, studying the feeds. "They're moving in groups of 10. They're searching room by room." 200, whispered. "We can't fight 200. "We won't fight 200, we'll fight 10. Then another 10, then another." Pulled up the maintenance map. "The station has service tunnels everywhere, air vents, emergency passages, places big soldiers can't easily go." She turned to the students. There were 3 of them, small and trembling. "You're small and fast. You can move through the vents. Can you do that?" They looked at each other. One of them, a young female named Bora, nodded slowly. "Yes, we can fit." Looked at your telepathy. They have psionic dampeners, but they're not perfect. Can you sense minds at close range? Closed her eyes, she concentrated. "Yes, if they are within 20 meters I can feel them, but I cannot read their thoughts, only their presence." "That's enough. You'll be our early warning system." Turned to "You want to fight, good, but you fight when I say, where I say, no charging blindly into death." His jaw tightened. "You expect us to follow a human child." "I expect you to live." Met his eyes without fear. "You're strong, maybe the strongest in this room, but they have energy weapons. Your armor won't stop a plasma bolt to the face. Fight smart and you'll get your battle. Fight stupid and you'll get a funeral." The room was silent, stared at for a long moment. Something in her eyes made him uncomfortable. There was no fear there, no doubt, just cold, calculating purpose. "Fine," he said at last, "but if your plan fails, I'm doing things my way." "Fair enough." Turned back to the console. "There's an emergency supply room connected to this section through a maintenance shaft. They will go through the vents and bring back whatever they find. Medical supplies, tools, anything useful." The 3 nodded and toward an air vent in the corner. Bora pulled off the cover, and they disappeared into the darkness. "What about the rest of us?" asked. Pointed to the maintenance door at the side of the room. "That door isn't blast sealed. It leads to a service corridor. We're going to move. Staying in one place is death. They will cut through that main door in about 15 minutes. We won't be here when they do." Instructor nodded slowly. "You have a destination in mind?" The engineering deck pulled up a map. It controls power, gravity, life support, everything. If we control engineering, we control the station. But that's where we'll go too, said. Yes. His lips curved into a small smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone setting a trap. They'll come to us, and we'll be ready. The station shook again. The sound of cutting came from the main door. Sparks began to fly from the edges. They're here, said, her voice tight with fear. Move to the maintenance door. She entered a code she had found in the system. The door hissed open, revealing a dark corridor. Everyone who wants to live, follow me. She stepped into the darkness. Stay quiet, stay together, and whatever happens, don't panic. One by one, the students followed her. They went first, their minds reaching out for danger. Then the others. Finally, they formed the rear guard, their claws ready. Was the last to leave. He looked back at the main door. They had almost cut through. His voice came from the darkness. Come now. He ran into the corridor. The door closed behind him. 30 seconds later, they burst into an empty classroom. They found nothing but abandoned seats and a flickering console. Their commander hissed with anger and ordered his soldiers to search. In the darkness of the maintenance tunnels, led her classmates deeper into the station. The hunt had begun, but they did not know yet that they were not the hunters. They were the prey. The maintenance tunnels were dark and narrow. Emergency lights glowed every few meters, casting weak orange pools of light. The air smelled of metal and machine oil. Pipes and cables covered the walls like the veins of some giant creature. 40 students moved through the darkness. Their footsteps echoed softly. No one spoke. Everyone understood that silence meant survival. Walked at the front. Her tablet glowed in her hands, showing the station's map. Behind her, they walked with closed eyes. Her mind reached out into the darkness, searching for enemy thoughts. Clear ahead, whispered. But I sense a group to our left, about 50 meters. They're moving away from us. Good, adjusted their path. We go right. Walked close behind her. His heart was beating fast. His hands were sweating. He had known for years. They had grown up together on the colony ship. He had always thought she was just a quiet girl who liked reading. Now he was seeing something different, something that had always been hidden beneath the surface. How are you so calm? He whispered. Did not look back. I'm not calm, I'm terrified. You don't look terrified. Fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. It doesn't mean you have to freeze. She paused at a junction, checking her tablet. On Earth, our ancestors faced predators with teeth as long as my arm. They were scared, but they made spears anyway. They set traps anyway. They survived. They continued moving. After 10 minutes, they reached a larger space. It was a maintenance hub where several tunnels met. Old equipment was stored here. Cables hung from the ceiling. Emergency supplies were stacked against the walls. We rest here for 2 minutes, said. They should meet us soon. As if on cue, a vent cover popped open. Bora and the other two tumbled out, their small arms full of supplies. We got medical kits, Bora reported. Some tools and these. She held up small metal cylinders. Took one and examined it. Emergency flares, good, what else? There was a security locker. We couldn't open it. That's fine, you did well. Distributed the supplies. Medical kits went to the students with first aid training. Tools went to those with strong hands. The flares she kept for herself. Pushed forward. We've been running like prey. When do we fight? Soon. Pulled up her tablet and showed him a map. They are spreading through the station in a pattern. They're checking every room, every corridor. But they're following a predictable search grid. That means we know where they'll be before they get there. So we ambush them. Exactly, but not with claws and muscle, pointed to a section of the map. This corridor has a fire suppression system. It uses liquid nitrogen to put out fires. Very cold. The cold makes them slow, weak, helpless. His eyes widened. You want to freeze them. Just enough to disable them. We don't need to kill, we just need to stop. Looked around at the group. I want a team of 5 to go back to our classroom corridor, hide in the vents. When the search there, activate the fire suppression. Then run. A female named stepped forward. I'll lead the team. Good, take 2 and 2. The small ones can escape through the vents if things go wrong. Handed a communicator from the supply pile. Signal us when it's done. Nodded and selected her team. They disappeared back down the tunnel they had come from. Turned to the remaining students. The rest of us keep moving toward engineering, but we're not going straight there. We're leaving traps behind us. For the next hour, they moved through the station's hidden pathways, and at every turn, created problems for the. She used cables to create tripwires across corridors. When soldiers ran through them, they would fall and lose time. She rerouted steam pipes to create pressure traps. When activated, scalding hot steam would burst from the walls. She set up false trails with torn pieces of uniform, leading squads into dead ends. She disconnected lighting in certain sections, creating patches of total darkness where her students could move unseen. They were impressed despite themselves. This was not the kind of warfare they knew. They were trained for direct combat, strength against strength, honor and glory. This was different, this was sneaky, clever, underhanded. Watch set another trap and shook his head. Is this how humans fight, with tricks and traps? When we can, said, not looking up from her work. We call it asymmetric warfare. When you can't win by being stronger, you win by being smarter. You turn the enemy's strength into a weakness. You attack where they're not looking. You make them afraid of every shadow. It seems dishonorable. Finished her trap and stood. On Earth, there was a general named Sun. He wrote a book about war thousands of years ago. One of his rules was this: all warfare is based on deception. He said the greatest victory is winning without fighting at all. That's impossible. Is it? Smiled slightly. Right now there are 200 soldiers on this station. We have 40 students, half of them non-combatants. By all logic, we should already be captured, but we're not. We're free, we're moving, and their soldiers are wandering into traps. That's not fighting, that's winning. A burst of static came from the communicator. His voice came through. It worked. We activated the suppression system. There were 8, they're frozen solid. We're heading to the backup meeting point. Cheers broke out among the students. For the first time since the invasion began, they felt hope. Allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. Then her face became serious again. That's 8 down, about 190 left. Keep moving. They continued through the tunnels. More reports came in. A steam trap had disabled another squad. A tripwire had caused 3 to tumble down a maintenance shaft. The false trails were sending enemy groups in circles. But they were learning. They started moving more carefully. Their commander must have realized something was wrong. Stopped suddenly. Her face went pale. I sensed something, many minds, very angry. They're coming this way, all of them. Checked her tablet. The station's internal sensors still worked in some areas. She saw what felt. Dozens of signatures, all converging on a single location. They're coming to engineering, said. They figured out where we're going. Grabbed her arm. Then we go somewhere else, we hide. No, his voice was firm. This is good. I wanted them to come to engineering. What, why? Looked at her classmates. 40 faces filled with fear and confusion. She took a breath. Because engineering has something the rest of the station doesn't. It has control over the gravity systems. Her eyes glinted with dangerous intelligence. They are strong, they're armored, they have weapons, but they're also heavy, and gravity is just a setting. Understanding began to dawn on the faces around her. We're not running to engineering to hide, said. We're going there to end this, one way or another. She turned and walked toward the final stretch of tunnel. Behind her, 40 students followed. They were scared. They were exhausted. But for the first time, they believed they might actually win. The engineering deck was massive. Huge reactors hummed with power. Cooling systems sent blue liquid through transparent pipes. Control consoles lined the walls, covered in blinking lights and switches. This was the heart of the station, everything connected here. Power, gravity, life support, communications. Stood at the main console. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. Around her, students took positions behind heavy equipment and reactor shields. The guarded the entrances, the hid in the vents above. The spread out, their minds searching for approaching enemies. "They're coming," said. Her voice was tight, many of them very close now. Did not look up from the console. "How many?" "I count, over 100 minds. They're surrounding us." Stood next to, watching her work. "What are you doing?" "Setting up gravity zones," pointed to the display. "The engineering deck has independent gravity controls. I can increase gravity in certain areas and decrease it in others, or invert it completely." "Invert it." "Make up become down, make the ceiling become the floor." Fingers kept moving. "The soldiers wear heavy armor. In normal gravity, that armor protects them. In inverted gravity, it becomes an anchor. They'll slam into the ceiling and won't be able to move." Approach from his position near the door. "They're here. I can hear them outside." Everyone fell silent. Through the thick metal doors, they could hear the clicking sounds of speech, the scraping of many legs on metal floors, the hum of charging weapons. Straightened, she turned to face the students. "Everyone remember the plan. Stay behind cover. Don't attack until I give the signal. And whatever happens, don't panic." "Easy for you to say," muttered. The doors exploded inward. Metal fragments flew across the room. Smoke filled the air. Through the haze, dark shapes poured in. Soldiers, their shells gleaming under the emergency lights. They were tall and terrible, with multiple limbs and weapons that glowed with deadly energy. They spread out quickly, surrounding the engineering deck. More and more entered until there were over 100 of them. They pointed their weapons at the students but did not fire. They were waiting for something. Then he entered. Commander was larger than his soldiers. His shell was darker, almost black, and covered with gold markings that showed his rank. He had 6 arms instead of 4. His eyes were like red jewels, cold and calculating. He walked to the center of the room. His soldiers parted to let him pass. When he spoke, his voice was deeper than the others, and the translator made his words sound like grinding stone. "So, the children who have been causing trouble." His red eyes scanned the room. They stopped on. "I have received many reports. Soldiers frozen, soldiers burned, soldiers lost in maintenance tunnels, and always the reports mention a small human female giving orders." Stepped forward. She was tiny compared to the commander. She had no weapons, no armor, nothing but her tablet and her mind. "You must be Commander," she said. "You know my name. I heard your announcement. I've also been monitoring your communications. Your encryption isn't very good." The commander's mandibles clicked. It might have been anger. It might have been amusement. "You are either very brave or very stupid little human. On Earth, we have a saying. The line between bravery and stupidity is drawn by the survivors." Tilted her head. "I plan to survive." "You cannot survive. You are surrounded, outnumbered, weak." Raised one of his arms. "Surrender now and I will let your classmates live. They will be slaves but alive. Continue to resist and everyone dies." Behind, the students trembled. Some were crying, even the looked uncertain. 100 weapons were pointed at them. There was no escape. Then something unexpected happened. Stepped forward. He moved to stand beside. His claws were out. His scales were raised in threat display. "If you want the human," growled, "you go through me." Moved next. He was shaking. His face was pale, but he stood at its other side. Then Bora. One by one, students moved forward. Even the aquatic students in their water suits. They formed a line in front of 40 students from 8 species standing together. Commander watched this with cold interest. Touching, but foolish, you cannot protect her. Pushed through the line. She walked toward until only a few meters separated them. You're right, she said. They can't protect me, so let's make a deal. You want me? Let them go, I'll stay. I'll answer your questions, I'll tell you how I did everything. In exchange, you release the students. No, shouted. His eyes gleamed. The human offers sacrifice. How noble, but why would I accept when I can simply take all of you? Because I'm the only one who knows how to stop what I've already started. Held up her tablet. In 15 minutes, this station's reactor will overload. Everything within 10 kilometers will be vaporized. Your ships are within that range. The room went still. Even the soldiers shifted nervously. You're bluffing, said. Am I? I've been in the engineering console for the last 20 minutes. What do you think I was doing? Voice was ice. Humans are not strong. We are not fast. We do not have armor or claws or telepathy. But we learned a long time ago that when you cannot win, you make sure the enemy cannot win either. We call it mutually assured destruction. We invented it. Stared at her. His red eyes bored into hers, searching for fear. He found none. You would kill yourself, kill your classmates, kill everyone. I would rather die free than live as a slave, smiled. It was a cold smile. And I would take an invasion fleet with me. Imagine the stories. A single human girl destroyed Commander and 100 ships. Your dominion would never live down the shame. The Commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. He was calculating, thinking. That was when gave the signal. She pressed a button on her tablet. The gravity in the room changed, but not for everyone, only in the zones where soldiers stood. One moment they were standing on the floor. The next moment they were falling upward. Their heavy armor pulled them toward the ceiling with crushing force. They slammed into the metal surface and stayed there, pinned by their own weight. Weapons fell from their grasping limbs. Legs kicked uselessly at the air. Commander was the hardest hit. His gold-marked armor was the heaviest. He smashed into the ceiling and could not move a single limb. The students still stood normally. The gravity in their zones had not changed. Walked across the floor. She looked up at, who hung above her like a trophy on a wall. On Earth, she said, we have another saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. She reached up and took the communicator from his belt. She activated it and spoke clearly into the device. Attention, fleet. This is the engineering deck of Horizon's Edge. Your commander is captured. Your soldiers are neutralized. You have two choices. Retreat from this station and never return, or find out what else humans learned in our 10,000 years of killing each other. She released the transmission button. The room was silent, except for the humming of reactors and the helpless clicking of soldiers. Approached slowly. His mouth was open. He could not find words. Lowered the communicator. Her hands were finally shaking. The fear she had been hiding was breaking through. The bluff about the reactor, whispered. Was it really a bluff? Turned to look at him. Her eyes were wet. I don't know, she said quietly. I really don't know. Then she sat down on the floor, wrapped her arms around her knees, and finally allowed herself to be 17 years old. A 17-year-old girl who had just faced down an army. Around her, her classmates began to cheer, but did not cheer. She just sat there, trembling, waiting to see if they would leave. In the space outside the station, the dark ships hesitated. Then, one by one, they began to turn away. They were leaving. Had won. The rescue ships arrived 3 hours later. They came from 6 different star systems, a combined fleet sent by the Galactic Council. They expected a battle. They expected to fight their way through defenses. They expected to find hundreds of dead students and a station in ruins. What they found was very different. They found the fleet already gone, retreating toward their own territory at maximum speed. They found the station intact, with only minor damage from the initial boarding. They found soldiers tied up with cables in the engineering deck, still pinned to the ceiling by modified gravity. And they found a small human girl sitting quietly in the corner, reading something on her tablet. The aftermath was chaos. Council representatives swarmed the station. Medical teams checked every student. Security forces took the captured into custody. Investigators documented everything. The students were brought to a safe area. Blankets were wrapped around shoulders. Warm drinks were pressed into shaking hands. Counselors were available for anyone who needed to talk. But the counselors found something strange. Many students did not need counseling. They were not traumatized. They were excited, proud. They had faced an invasion and won. And they all had the same name on their lips. News spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. A single human girl, 17 years old, with no weapons and no special abilities, had defeated an invasion force. She had used traps, tactics, and tricks that they had never seen before. She had captured their commander. She had made their entire fleet retreat in shame. It was impossible. It was ridiculous. It was also true. Representatives from every major species came to interview her. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know how she had done it. Answered their questions quietly. She explained about the gravity zones. She explained about the cold traps. She explained about the psychological warfare, making the enemy afraid of shadows and tripwires. "But where did you learn these tactics?" a general asked. "Who trained you?" Held up her tablet. On the screen was a list of books. The Art of War by Sun, The History of the War by Thucydides, On Guerrilla Warfare by Mao, The Science of War by various authors, also biology textbooks, chemistry manuals, station engineering guides. The general stared at her. "You learned warfare from books. Humans write everything down, every battle, every strategy, every trick that ever worked. 300,000 years of survival knowledge available to anyone who wants to read it." Shrugged. I wanted to read it. The interviews continued for days, but eventually they ended. Life began to return to normal. The damaged sections of the station were repaired. Classes resumed. Students went back to their studies. But nothing was really normal anymore. Noticed it first in the hallways. Aliens who had ignored her before now stepped aside when she passed. They lowered their heads slightly. They spoke to her with respect in their voices. They were the most changed. Once they had mocked humans as weak. Now they treated like a warrior chief, followed her around like a loyal guard. He refused to let anyone speak badly of humans in his presence. "I was wrong about your species," he told her one day. "I thought strength was everything. I thought the strong always won. But you showed me something different. You showed me that the mind can be sharper than any claw." Was uncomfortable with the attention. She had not done what she did to become famous. She had done it to survive. "I just want to finish school," she told. "I don't think that's going to be easy anymore," he replied. He was right. The Galactic Council sent a formal invitation. They wanted to join their military academy. She would be the youngest student ever admitted. They offered full support, a personal tutor, and a fast track to command rank. Declined. "Why?" the council representative asked. He was a tall being with silver skin and 4 eyes. He could not understand why anyone would refuse such an honor. "Because I don't want to be a soldier," said. "I don't want to fight. What I did because I had no choice, because people were going to die, because someone had to do something, but I don't want that to be my life." The representative was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I think I understand. You did not enjoy the violence." "No, I didn't." Looked out the window at the stars. "Humans are good at war, too good. We've spent most of our history hurting each other. I know all the tricks because we invented all the tricks, but that's not something to celebrate. That's something to be careful about." Before the representative left, spoke again. "There is something you could do, though. What is that? Add human military history to your curriculum, not to teach other species how to fight us, but to teach them what happens when wars get out of control. We have examples of what works. We also have examples of terrible mistakes. Maybe if other species learn from our history, they won't repeat it. The representative considered this. That is wise. I will bring this suggestion to the council. 3 months later, a new subject appeared in schools across the galaxy. It was called Terran Strategic Studies. It covered human warfare from the earliest battles to the most recent conflicts. It analyzed human tactics, human strategies, and human psychology. At the beginning of each class, instructors showed a video. It was a message recorded at the request of the council. My name is, the message began. I am a human. A few months ago, I helped defend my school against an invasion. Many people call me brave. Many people call me a hero, but I don't feel like a hero. I was scared. I was desperate. I did what I had to do to survive. She paused in the recording. Humans are not the strongest species. We do not have special abilities, but we have survived things that should have killed us. Ice ages, plagues, predators, and most of all each other. We are the species that learned to kill mammoths with pointed sticks. We are the species that built weapons that could destroy our own world. We are dangerous not because we are powerful, but because we refuse to give up. The message ended with a simple statement. Learn from our history, learn from our mistakes, and remember this. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy is not the one with the biggest claws. It is the one that keeps getting back up. Back on the station, life continued. Went to classes. She sat in the back. She read her tablet. She was still quiet. She still kept to herself. But sometimes, new students would approach her. They would ask about what happened. They would want to hear the story. Never told them the whole truth. She never told them about the fear that had gripped her heart. She never told them about the moment when she almost gave up. She never told them that she still had nightmares about Commander's red eyes. Instead, she would simply say, I read a lot of books. When trouble came, I remembered what I had read. That's all. It was not all. It was not even close to all, but was tired of being a hero. She wanted to be a student again, just a normal girl who liked reading. One evening found her on the observation deck. She was sitting by the window looking at the stars. On her tablet was a new book. The title read, The Siege of Masada, A History. More war history? Asked, sitting beside her. It's about a group of people who held off an entire army against impossible odds. Smiled slightly. Sound familiar? Laughed a little bit. They sat in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there they were licking their wounds. Somewhere out there, other species were reading about humans for the first time. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning to respect the strange, stubborn, impossible species from a small blue planet. Did not think about any of that. She just read her book and enjoyed the quiet. But in the back of her mind, she was already preparing, already learning, already getting ready for the next time someone underestimated humanity. Because there would be a next time, there always was. And when that time came, would be ready. The galaxy was vast and full of danger, but so were humans. 300,000 years of survival had made them something special, something strange, something terrifying. They had learned this lesson the hard way. Others would learn it too. And at the center of it all, a quiet girl sat reading in the back of the class. Taking notes.